great scripture, because I've been wanting to study Bhagavad Gita for a long time, since when I was very little. We used to have Gita chanting sessions in school, Gita competitions. And at that time, we used to memorize certain sections of the Bhagavad Gita. Like, for example, the Sthita Prajna Lakshanas, which are 18 verses from the second chapter, that Mahatma Gandhi used to recite every day. Every day he used to recite. And even today, in his ashram, Sabarmati ashram, the same 18 verses, every day somebody will sing. So we used to learn those verses, and there used to be competition and so forth. So my knowledge at that time of Bhagavad Gita was very limited, only a few verses here and there. And after he said that, I made a determination, okay, let me study Bhagavad Gita more sincerely. And all of us have this experience, right? We make a resolution that, okay, this year I am going to do yoga, and January 1st we make a resolution. And till January 15th, perhaps, we keep up with that resolution, right? So that was the same case with me. For several years, I had this idea, okay, from tomorrow I am going to start. And it never happened. And later, in one of the DSM courses, Anand Rajendran, you might have done some courses with him. He's a very dynamic teacher. So he said, okay, you better start studying Bhagavad Gita. And he also recommended the book that Gurudev himself said, okay, if you want to begin Bhagavad Gita, here is the book. And I started with that. And also, one of the great advantages of traveling and teaching Shri Shri Yoga is I meet a lot of wonderful people like you all. And once when I taught a Shri Shri Yoga course in College Station, there was a person who was a member of a study group of the Bhagavad Gita. And she asked me, why don't you give a guest lecture on Patanjali's Yoga Sutras? Because I had spoken a lot about some of the sutras from Patanjali's text, because it was a yoga course, right? So I said yes, and I gave this talk for 1 hour in the study group, and people were very impressed. They said, oh, you talk so well, so why don't you become a regular member, give a talk every week? And so for the last 4 years, I've been in that study group. Not only I've been talking about Patanjali Yoga Sutras, I've also been learning. There are great scholars in that group, and one of them is well versed in the Bhagavad Gita. He knows all the verses, the tip of his fingers. So thanks to him, I've been studying under his guidance. His name is Dr. Venkataraju. I've been studying under his guidance, and it has been a great experience. And after I began studying the Bhagavad Gita in the study group, I noticed whenever Guruji mentions verses from the Bhagavad Gita, it used to register in my mind. Because previously, whatever he says, okay, this is some nice knowledge, it feels so good to hear. But then it goes through 1 year and comes away from the other year, right? Some of you have done the Shri Shri Yoga level 2, where we pour water through one nose and comes Chalanidhi. Like that, this is a form of Chalanidhi, right? Knowledge goes through 1 year and comes out through the other. But because we were in that study group, whatever verses that he used to quote, it used to register in my mind. And there are many verses, and we will cover about 5 or 6 of them today, depending on how much time we have. He used to quote very frequently, and many of the verses he says, it is a good idea if you can memorize them. Memorize these verses, because there is so much of depth of knowledge in these verses. You can apply them in every moment of life. So knowledge is not something like an entertainment. Oh, we hear something, it feels good, and that's it. But it is something that is dynamic. The knowledge enriches our life experience in every moment. So I thought we will cover a few of those verses that Guruji repeats. He uses the power of repetition to drill our mind. Okay, here, one more time, take it. Take this knowledge. Remember this verse. I encourage you to memorize it, like that he says. So a few of those verses we will see. How many of you have listened to this knowledge tape, Secret of Secrets? Secret of Secrets. Some of you have listened to it, right? So in that talk, he gives knowledge about one of the verse he says, if possible, memorize this verse. You will see what verse that is. It is from the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. The 9th chapter is called Rajaguhya Rajavidya Yoga Nama. So it is the chapter on the royal secret. Rajavidya Rajaguhya Yoga Nama. So royal secret. So what is the royal secret? That has been captured in one of the verses from the 9th chapter, and that is what he talks about in that knowledge day. Secret of secrets. This talk, incidentally, was taken from the Guru Purnima talk in 1994. 1994. So long back. But he, of course, keeps repeating this verse, and he says, even today, few weeks back, he mentioned this verse again. So, do you remember the verse? Many of you have listened to that knowledge tape. Do you remember the verse? How many of you can quote that line? Some of you are connecting online to check. So, do you want to know what that secret of secret is? That verse? So, that line that he quotes is Anityam asukham lokam imam prapya bhajasvamam. Anityam asukham lokam imam prapya bhajasvamam. This is verse number 33 in the 9th chapter, and the whole verse, it goes like this. Kim punar brahmana punya bhakta rajarushyastatha anityam asukham lokam imam prapya bhajasvamam. Some of you may remember this. Anityam asukham lokam imam prapya bhajasvamam, in that talk, Secret of Secrets. So what does it mean? What is the secret behind this verse, and how we can apply this knowledge? So the teaching here is Anityam asukham lokam. That means from the world we cannot expect security or permanence. We cannot expect nityam or permanent security, nor can we expect sukham. So the world, whatever it gives, is transient, because there is a beginning and the end, and it is not the source of joy anyways. It is asukham, anityam asukham lokam, transient, and it is not the source of joy. Many of us, we make the mistake, okay, if I obtain one more object, if I buy that object, if I buy iPhone 7, then I will be happy. And we stand in the line. By the way, I'm an Apple fanboy, so I know how it feels like. So we get one more object in our home, and for 2 days we are very happy. For 2 days. You know why we are happy? It's a very interesting thing. We are happy not because there was some happiness contained in that object, and suddenly we receive that happiness and wow, we are joyful. It is not because of that at all. The true reason why we are happy for 2 days when we obtain some object is, for those 2 days our mind has no hankering. We are not thinking, oh, I need to get one more thing. No. For those 2 days our mind is free of raga or craving. But what is the true source of joy? And Guruji says very beautifully, in the world, why is the world there? Why can't we seek happiness in the world? Because the happiness resides inside. And Guruji says, the purpose of the world is so that we can perform actions as an expression of joy, not an expectation of joy. It's very beautiful, right? Perform actions as an expression of joy. The world is there for an excuse so that we can dump a lot of happiness there. You be happy and then you express, shine that happiness, share the happiness with the world. That is why the world is there in the first place. It is not because, okay, let me grab happiness from here, little more from here, little more from there. No, that's not the purpose at all. The world is there for us to express, and it's very beautifully said by Guruji. It's a very nice quote, right, by Guruji. Perform actions as an expression of joy rather than an expectation of joy. So, anityam asukham lokam imam prapya vajasvamam. Having received this knowledge that the world is transient and the world is not the source of joy, imam prapya vajasvamam. having obtained this knowledge and having obtained this true source of happiness, having connected with that, share it. Bhaja means to share. It means to remember. It also means to share. Imam prapya bhaja swamam. Share me, because the divine is the source of happiness. Share the divinity. Share that happiness with the world. It's very beautiful knowledge, right? And Guruji keeps saying, it will be good if you can memorize this line. Anityam asukam lokam imam prapya bhajasvamam. Shall we repeat this together? These two lines? You can follow along after me. Kim punar brahmana punya.
Kim punar brahmana punya.
Bhakta rajarushayastatha.
Bhakta rajarishayasthata.
Anityam asukam lokam.
Anityam asukam lokam.
Imam prapya bhajasvamam.
Imam prapya bhajasvamam.
So you can look it up later. This is the 33rd verse of 9th chapter. So the first line, I'll just briefly mention what it means. Kim punar brahmana punya bhakta rajarshayastata. That means this secret, the secret of secrets, that the true source of happiness is within, and the purpose of this creation is to share that happiness. There are 4 types of people who already know this secret. So who are the 4 types of people? Kim punar brahmana. Brahmanas. Punya, people who are doing good work, engaged in service, good work. Bhakta, people who are in devotion. Kim punar brahmana punya bhakta rajarshayastata. Raja rishis, great rishis. So these 4 types of people know this secret, and they are in that state of happiness already. So like that, if we know this secret, we can use this in our daily life. So when we are feeling awful, or when we are feeling depressed, oh, I feel lousy today, then it is a good idea to remind ourselves, oh, if I get that object, or if I do this, our actions is not the source of happiness. Objects are not the source of happiness. Source of happiness is within, and when we share it, we will feel better. We will find that relief from the discomfort in the mind by sharing that happiness. It's very good knowledge, right? And last year, during Guru Purnima, he quoted one more verse. In fact, he quotes this verse also very frequently. The first time I heard this verse was during Patanjali Yoga Sutras. Gurudev has spoken about the Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, and in one of the tapes, the name of the tape is the 3 types of tapas. 3 types of tapas. In that tape, he quotes this verse from the Bhagavad Gita. And he quotes this very frequently, and last year during Guru Purnima, he mentioned this verse. The verse is about the tapas of speech. Tapas of speech. What is tapas? So let us explore a little bit about tapas before we look into this verse. What is tapas? Most of us understand tapas as austerity or penance or intense practice. We associate tapas with some intense yoga. Oh, I'll do tapas for 2 hours today. Or I will stand on the mountain top on one leg. That is tapas. What tapas truly is, the word tapas means to heat. Tapa means to heat. To heat. Now, there are 5 fires in the body, 5 fires in the system. So briefly, they are the Bhutagni, which is the physical fire. That is what keeps the temperature of the body. And when we experience fever, for example, the body is using the physical fire to pump up the temperature, the heat, so that any invading organisms, they will be killed, they will be destroyed. So unwanted visitors in our body, in the form of germs and so forth, the best way to destroy them, the immunity of the body, it pumps up the heat so that they get destroyed. So we are using that heat, the physical heat in the body, as tapas. That is one way to use tapas, using the physical heat. We cook food. That is also tapas. Because when we cook food, it purifies the food. It destroys the germs in the food. In fact, Patanjali says in the Yoga Sutras, there are 2 benefits of engaging in tapas. Kayendra Siddhi Ashuddhikshayat Tapasaha. Kayendra Siddhi means it allows the organs of the body to function in their peak form. Siddhi means perfection. So in the peak form, the organs of the body will no longer be dull. No. They won't be working in 25% efficiency. No. It will be working in full 100% efficiency. The mind is sharp, functioning not in 10% efficiency but 100% efficiency. So that is one benefit of engaging in tapas. The other benefit is it strengthens the system and purifies the system. So Kayendra Siddhi, Ashuddhi Kshaya, it purifies the system. It removes the impurities. So these are the two benefits. And one way to introduce tapas is by using Bhutagni, which is the physical fire. What are the other four Agnis? Second is the Jataragni. Jataragni is the fire of digestion. Fasting, for example, when we engage in fast, it is a tapas where we are using the Jataragni to purify the system. Many times, even before we are hungry, we dump food in our system, right? So we are not allowing that fire of digestion to purify the system. So it is said in Ayurveda, consume food only when you are a little bit hungry. Don't go to the extreme and be, after 4 days, okay, let me increase the hunger and then eat. No. It has to be done with some skill. In fact, one of the definition of yoga is yoga karma sukhaushala. Skill in action is yoga. It's from the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Yoga karma sukhaushala. So, little bit of feeling of hunger, when the Jataragni comes up, we use it to purify the system and then consume food. So that is also a tapas. Fasting, when we use the power of Jataragni for fasting, it is tapas. And then the third Agni is Bhadabhagni. Bhadabhagni means the fire of criticism. Fire of when so many eyes are on you. Then how does it feel? Everyone is looking at you and they are observing every movement of what you are doing. How does it feel? There is some fire, some heat coming up, right? So that is Bhadabhagni. And we can use this as a tapas. How can we use it as a tapas? One way in which we use it in the scientific community, for example. I am a researcher. I write papers, publish papers, patents. Whatever manuscript that I write, it has to be peer reviewed. So many eyes will look at it. They will read the paper. They will find any errors in the paper. And when lot of people review that paper, at the end of it, there is less and less errors. And hopefully there are no longer any errors. So we improve the quality of the presentation using Bhadabhagni, fire of criticism. A lot of people criticize that work, remove the error, and then it is now a perfect product. So this is tapas using Bhadabhagni. And then Kamagni is the fourth fire, the fire of desire. Just like consuming food even before we are hungry, many times we bring one more object into our home even before we truly want it. Right? We just go to the shopping mall. It has become a pastime or a hobby. So we go there, we don't truly need it, and we acquire one more object in our home, and soon, after a few weeks, our home is like a museum. There are so many objects that is adorning our home. Now, how can we use Kamagni as tapas? It is very simple. Observe that desire, that fire of desire that is coming up, and use it to purify the system. And it is said in the yoga literature that when we allow the Kamagni to come up, and when we go through that fire, it promotes dispassion or vairagya. We become more and more centered. We obtain this blessing called vairagya. Vairagya. In fact, it is said in yoga, abhyasa vairagyabhyam tan nirodha. It is through the practice or abhyasa and vairagya, centeredness, you can make progress in the path of yoga. And the same teaching appears in the Bhagavad Gita also. So we are making a little bit of detour, but let me mention that verse from the Bhagavad Gita. It's very interesting. You know, in the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, it is called Dhyana Yoga, the chapter on meditation. In Dhyana Yoga, if you read, the first 30 or so verses is Lord Krishna giving the instructions on meditation. How to sit, where to sit, how to hold the body, how to close your eyes and take your awareness to the point in between the eyebrows, and how to manage your thoughts. So like that, a long list of instructions he gives. And then you sit for meditation. Then you experience meditation. And after this teaching, Arjuna asks a very interesting question that we can all relate to. He says, "Oh Krishna, you are telling me to bring the mind again and again back to the self, but my mind is always restless. My mind is like the wind. It is like the hurricane. It is very difficult to control." The verse goes like this. Chanchalam hi manah Krishna pramadhi balavadridham tasyaham nigraham manye vayoriva sudushkaram. So it's just like the wind. It is always moving. It is very difficult to control. How do you expect me to quiet the mind and experience meditation? And you want to know what Lord Krishna says? He gives the teaching. Asamshayam mahabaho manodurnigraham chalam abhyasena tu kaunteya vairagyena cha grihyate. He says, Asamshayam mahabaho. No doubt the mind is like that. Don't worry, there's nothing wrong with your mind. It is the nature of the mind. It is no doubt. Everyone has the same experience. The mind is like that. But, he says, using abhyasa and vairagya, using practice and dispassion, you can quiet the mind. It becomes easy to quiet the mind. The mind will then listen to you. And how do you promote vairagya? How to go deeper in vairagya? One of the ways is tapas. Tapas using kama-agni. Whenever the fire of desire comes up, rather than quenching that fire immediately in the next 28 seconds, you immediately have this desire and we go on to the internet, because now you can do shopping that with our fingertips, right? Immediately we quench that thirst. But here, you observe that fire of desire, go through that fire, and you will notice we become more and more dispassionate. We discover that, oh, I am happy even though that object is not there with me. I am happy, I am centered. I don't really need that object. We experience it. It becomes a wisdom. It is no longer information or a teaching that is outside, but we introduce it in our life. It becomes our wisdom. So we can use Kama-agni for tapas, to promote vairagya. And then the last agni is Jnana-agni, the fire of knowledge. How can we use the fire of knowledge for tapas? It is very simple. Whatever action we do, whatever thoughts we think, shine the spotlight of awareness on that. Make all the actions mindful. Many times we act because of our habits. We become like a robo, right? We keep doing the same thing. We wake up in the morning, we brush our teeth, our mind is elsewhere. It is already on the vacation. And we are still brushing our teeth. The mind is disconnected from the body. And we go through the daily routine in a mechanical way. We become like a zombie, right? But the way to use Jnana-agni is whatever we do, whatever we speak, whatever we think, you allow the spotlight of awareness to shine on it, and only those actions that are beneficial, you allow that to express. And that is where this verse that Guruji quoted in the last year, Guru Purnima, it is tapas of speech. How can we use Jnana-agni, the power of the fire of awareness, to purify our speech? And the verse goes like this. Anudvegakaram vakyam satyam priyahitam chayat swadhyayabhyasanam chaiva vangmayam tapa uchyate. So vangmaya tapas, that means the tapas of speech. What is the tapas of speech? He gives certain prerequisites how to practice the tapas of speech. He says, Anudvegakaram vakyam. Those words that do not cause conflict or fear in the mind. Dvesha means hatred. So, anudvega karam vakyam. Lack of hatred or lack of fear, lack of introducing conflicts in the mind. So, that speech which does not promote hatred or conflict in the other's mind. And then, satyam, truthful speech. Many times, we want to make the other person happy. So, when they ask, how's my cooking? And sometimes we say, oh, it's fantastic. So, in the true tapas of speech, not only are we saying uplifting things, not only are the words not causing conflict in the mind, but it is also truthful. Satyam. Priya hitam chayata. Priya means it is expressed in a loving manner. It is not like a brutal truth. Sometimes people say, okay, this is the truth. Take it whether you like it or not. This is how it is. I am telling the truth. It is said that righteousness, being right, demonstrating and asserting that I am right, is not the highest expression of divinity. Guruji says, it is better to be loving than to be right. It is better to be loving than to be right, and it is best to be loving and right. So, Satyam Priya Hitam Chayat. Satyam, truthful, and Priya, expressed in a loving manner, and Hitam Chayat, that which brings relief. So, if the other person is already fearful or if they are having negative emotions, that which brings relief to that negative emotion. So, all this, Anudvega Karam Vakyam, Satyam Priya Hitam Chayat, and then Swadhyaya Bhyasanam Chaiva. Swadhyaya means self-study. Using the words not for gossiping, but to go deeper into study. Like what we are doing here. We are using words to go deeper in knowledge. When we study a scripture or when we listen to knowledge, that means we are using the words for uplifting, self-study. Swadhyaya Abhyasanam. Abhyasa of Swadhyaya. Vangmayam Tapa Uchyate. This is the tapas of speech. So, how can we apply the Jnanagni or the fire of awareness for the Vangmaya tapas, tapas of speech? It's very simple. When we are about to say something, rather than making it a reactive behavior, just blurting out whatever comes in the mind, shine the spotlight of awareness. You look at it, mindfully looking at whatever we are expressing in the form of speech, and only if it is satisfying all these parameters, not introducing conflict in the other's mind, it is truthful, it is expressed lovingly, and it brings relief from their negative emotions. Then allow that words to express themselves. So if we have a tall booth in our mind, you allow the words to flow only if it satisfies all these parameters. And that is Vangmaya tapas. And Guruji quotes this verse very frequently. And this was the theme, one of the knowledge points that he spoke at length in last year's Guru Purnima. I think for many of us the Jataragni is already very high. Right? So many of us are already in tapas. Jataragni. I think there is some delicious, nutritious and sumptuous food. Are there any questions on these few verses that we covered? It's very nice knowledge, right?
I have a question about